I am Samantha, 29 years old, and I never thought I would be homeless while living under my parents' roof. Yet there I was, my belongings piled in the hallway, as my mother casually informed me they had given my bedroom to my younger sister Brooke. Their words still echo in my mind. You can just sleep on the floor until you figure life out. I didn't argue. I just nodded and quietly began planning something they never saw coming. If you're watching this right now, let me know where you're from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had family treat you like an afterthought. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. Before everything fell apart, I had been the model daughter. After graduating with honors in architecture from Berkeley, I found myself caught in the middle of an economic recession that hit the construction industry particularly hard. My carefully laid plans of starting at a prestigious firm crumbled as hiring freezes and layoffs swept through the field. Like many in my graduating class, I reluctantly moved back home to Rochester, New York, planning to stay just long enough to secure employment and build some savings. Initially, my parents, Diana and Frank, seemed supportive. Mom would pack lunch for my interviews, and Dad would offer to proofread my application letters. Our family home, while not spacious, had always felt comfortable. My childhood bedroom remained largely untouched during my college years, a sanctuary of achievement with academic awards lining the walls and architecture models displayed proudly on shelves. My younger sister Brooke, for years my junior, was in her final year of high school when I moved back home. We had always been close despite our different personalities. Where I was methodical and reserved, Brooke was spontaneous and outgoing. She would burst into my room at random hours, sprawling across my bed to share high school drama or ask for advice about college applications. I didn't mind these interruptions. After years away at college, reconnecting with my sister felt like regaining a piece of myself. "Sam, you think I have a shot at State University?" she asked one evening, tossing her blonde hair over her shoulder while I worked on job applications. "With your extracurriculars and grades?" "Absolutely," I assured her, genuinely believing my sister had bright prospects ahead. Those first few months at home, I established a routine. Mornings were dedicated to job searches and applications. Afternoons often involved household chores to contribute to the family. I cooked dinner 3 nights a week, deep cleaned the bathrooms every Sunday, and even helped my father repair the deck in the backyard. Beyond household duties, I contributed $300 monthly toward utilities and groceries from my dwindling savings, determined not to be a complete burden. The first hints of trouble emerged gradually. At dinner one evening, my mother announced that Brooke had been selected for an honors program at her high school. "This will really bolster her college applications," Mom beamed, serving an extra portion of roast chicken onto Brooke's plate. "Samantha was in honors too," Dad mentioned, almost as an afterthought. Mom nodded dismissively. "Yes, but competition was different back then. Brooke is facing much more pressure than Samantha ever did." I noticed Brooke glancing at me apologetically, but I simply smiled and changed the subject. There was no point in creating tension over such a small slight. Besides, I had just secured a promising interview with Hartman Design Group, a mid-sized architecture firm specializing in sustainable commercial spaces. "I have an interview next Wednesday," I announced, hoping to steer the conversation toward my potential career prospects. "That's nice, dear," Mom said, turning immediately back to Brooke. "Now tell us more about this honors project of yours." I swallowed my disappointment and focused on preparing for my interview. The position at Hartman seemed perfect, combining my interest in sustainable design with commercial architecture. The interview went exceptionally well. Marissa Hartman herself seemed impressed with my portfolio and understanding of sustainable materials. "We need someone who understands both the practical and aesthetic considerations of green design," she told me as we wrapped up. "Your portfolio demonstrates that balance beautifully. We'll be in touch within 2 weeks." Driving home, I allowed myself to feel genuine hope for the first time in months. The starting salary would be enough for me to secure my own apartment, perhaps even with a small studio space where I could work on personal projects. That evening, I splurged on ingredients for a celebratory family dinner, preparing my mother's favorite lasagna recipe with handmade pasta and 3 different cheeses. The meal was the last normal family gathering we would have. Dad opened a bottle of wine, and even Brooke seemed genuinely interested in hearing about my interview. For a few precious hours, I felt like an equal member of the family again, not just the unemployed older daughter sleeping in her childhood bedroom. To Samantha, Dad raised his glass. Soon to be the newest architect at Hartman Design. I smiled, unaware that within 48 hours, everything would change. Had I known what was coming, I might have savored that dinner more, memorized the way my family looked at me with something resembling pride. Instead, I went to bed that night filled with optimism, believing that the temporary detour of moving home was finally coming to an end. The next morning, I left early to attend a networking event for young professionals in the city. Little did I know that while I was out shaking hands and exchanging business cards, my parents were making a decision that would alter our relationship forever. 2 days after my promising interview, I returned home from a follow-up meeting with a contractor who had offered to let me shadow him on projects until I secured full-time employment. The house was unusually quiet when I pulled into the driveway. Entering through the side door as usual, I called out a greeting but received no response. Assuming everyone was out, I headed upstairs to change clothes before starting dinner prep. The sight that greeted me at the top of the stairs stopped me cold. My belongings, boxes of books, clothing, personal mementos, architecture supplies had been haphazardly piled in the narrow hallway. My first thought was that we had been robbed, but nothing seemed missing, just displaced. Heart pounding, I rushed to my bedroom door and pushed it open. The transformation was immediate and jarring. My twin bed had been replaced with Brooke's queen-sized one. The walls, previously adorned with my architectural prints and college pennants, now displayed my sister's collection of concert posters and string lights. Where my drafting table had stood by the window now sat Brooke's vanity, cluttered with makeup and hair products. It was as if someone had erased all evidence of my existence from the space. "Oh, you're home," my mother said casually, appearing behind me with a laundry basket. "We moved your things out." Brooke needed more space for her senior year. I turned slowly, struggling to process her words. "You moved me out? Without asking or even telling me?" "Well, you were out all day," she replied as if that explained everything. "Besides, you're barely here anyway with all your meetings and job hunting." "Where am I supposed to sleep?" My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "The living room floor should be fine for now," Dad chimed in, emerging from the master bedroom. "We have that old sleeping bag from camping trips. Until you figure your life out and get your own place." The casual cruelty of their words hit me like physical blows. Until I figured my life out? As if my unemployment was a personal failing rather than the result of a devastating economic recession. As if I hadn't been actively searching for work every single day. Brooke appeared in what had been my doorway, twirling a strand of hair around her finger. "I needed the bigger room for all my college prep stuff," she explained with a shrug. "And it's not like you have a real job or anything." "I contribute to this household," I said quietly, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I pay toward utilities. I cook. I clean. And we appreciate that," Mom said with the dismissive tone one might use with a child. "But Brooke is at a crucial point in her development. Her needs take priority right now." I stood there, surrounded by the scattered pieces of my life, trying to formulate a response that would make them understand the magnitude of what they had done. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, a strange calm settled over me, a detachment that felt like floating above the scene, observing it happen to someone else. "I see," was all I managed to say. "Don't make this into a bigger deal than it is, Samantha," Dad said, his tone indicating the matter was closed for discussion. "Family supports each other. Right now, Brooke needs support. You can handle sleeping on the floor for a while." That night, I spread the musty sleeping bag on the living room floor, positioning myself between the coffee table and the television. Every time someone needed to walk through the room, I had to curl up tighter to avoid being stepped on. The hardwood floor pressed against my hip bones painfully, and the thin sleeping bag provided minimal cushioning. Sleep eluded me as household noises amplified in the open space. The refrigerator hummed, the heating system clicked, and upstairs, I could hear Brooke playing music in my former room. Around midnight, I heard laughter from her phone call, the sound floating down the stairs like a taunt. Morning brought no relief. I woke before sunrise with a stiff neck and aching back, quickly packing away the sleeping bag before anyone came downstairs. The unspoken expectation was clear. My makeshift bed should be invisible during the day, as if acknowledging its existence would embarrass the family. From the kitchen, I watched as my parents entered what was now officially Brooke's room with paint swatches and measuring tape. They were redecorating further, cementing the transfer of space. "We're thinking lavender for the walls," Mom told me when she came down for coffee, as if I might be interested in the transformation of my former sanctuary. "Brooke thinks it will help with her concentration for studying." I nodded mutely, stirring my coffee with mechanical precision. The betrayal wasn't just about losing physical space, it was about being erased, demoted, deemed less valuable than my sister. It was about the assumption that I deserved less because I was struggling professionally in a global economic crisis. "Will you be home for dinner?" Mom asked, already turning away. "Yes," I replied, knowing my presence at the table was expected even as my presence in a bedroom was not. That evening, I sat through dinner listening to excited chatter about Brooke's room makeover plans. No one asked about my job search or the follow-up email I had sent to Hartman Design. No one seemed to notice the dark circles under my eyes from lack of sleep. I had become invisible while still physically present, a ghost haunting the periphery of my own family. Later, as I again unrolled the sleeping bag on the hard floor, a resolve began to form within me. This situation was untenable, but arguing would only cast me as the difficult, ungrateful daughter. Instead, I needed a different approach entirely. As I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the first seeds of a plan began to take root. The next 3 weeks were an exercise in systematic humiliation. Each night on the living room floor grew more uncomfortable than the last. A persistent ache developed in my lower back, radiating down my legs by morning. My productivity suffered as fatigue became my constant companion. Still, I maintained the appearance of acceptance, saying nothing as the situation deteriorated further. Mom began complaining when my toiletries took up too much space in the bathroom. "Could you keep your things in a caddy? Brooke needs more counter space for her skincare routine." I complied silently, storing my basic necessities in a plastic basket that I carried back and forth from the downstairs coat closet. My clothes remained in boxes in the hallway, growing increasingly wrinkled as I rummaged through them each morning. When I asked about using part of the hall closet, Dad shook his head. "That closet needs to stay accessible for guests," he said, though we rarely had visitors. The physical discomfort was matched only by the growing emotional distance. Family conversations happened around me, not with me. Dinners became performances where I played the role of quiet observer rather than participant. When I did speak about a promising email from another architecture firm, my parents nodded distractedly before returning to Brooke's latest achievement in student government. "Brooke might be class president next year," Mom would say with pride that never colored her voice when speaking about my accomplishments. Brooke's attitude shifted from mild apology to entitled dismissal. She began inviting friends over without warning, their loud presence forcing me to retreat to the backyard or local coffee shop since I had no private space. One afternoon, I returned from a job fair to find 4 teenage girls sprawled across the living room, my sleeping space, watching movies. "Oh, this is my sister," Brooke told them with a laugh when I walked in. "She's, like, between things right now." I caught the exchanged glances, the barely suppressed smirks. Madison, Brooke's best friend since elementary school, didn't bother hiding her reaction. "So you actually sleep right here?" she asked, patting the floor where my sleeping bag would be unrolled later. "That's so sad." "It's temporary," I replied with dignity I didn't feel. "Yeah, like until she figures out her life," Brooke added, the cruel echo of our parents' words cutting deeper coming from her. Despite my displacement, my parents' expectations for my contributions remained unchanged. I still cooked dinner 3 nights weekly, cleaned the common areas, and contributed financially from my rapidly dwindling savings. The inequality of the arrangement grew more stark with each passing day. "Samantha, did you forget to clean the guest bathroom?" Mom asked one morning as I prepared for a video interview. I cleaned it yesterday, I replied, adjusting my only unwrinkled blouse. Well, it needs doing again. Brooke's study group is coming over, and they'll need to use it. I missed the first 5 minutes of my interview because I was scrubbing a bathroom that was already clean, all for the comfort of my sister's friends who treated our home as their personal recreation center. The turning point came unexpectedly on a Tuesday afternoon. My phone buzzed with an email notification as I was helping prepare dinner. It was from Marissa Hartman. We would like to offer you the junior architect position discussed in your interview. Starting salary, $62,000 annually with benefits beginning after 90 days. Please respond at your earliest convenience to discuss start date and paperwork. A surge of elation washed through me, followed immediately by a strange sense of calm determination. This was my ticket out, but not in the way my family might expect. Ordinarily, this would be news to share, an achievement to celebrate together. Instead, I said nothing, slipping my phone back into my pocket as I continued chopping vegetables. Something important? Mom asked, noticing my momentary distraction. Just spam, I lied, feeling no guilt about the deception. That weekend brought a family gathering that expanded my private humiliation into a public spectacle. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Gregory came for dinner, along with my cousins. I had always been close with Aunt Patricia, who shared my interest in design and had encouraged my pursuit of architecture. "Samantha, how are you settling back in at home?" she asked warmly as we set the dining table. Before I could answer, Mom interjected. "Oh, she's camping out in the living room for now. We gave her room to Brooke. She needed more space for her senior year activities." The shock on my aunt's face was quickly masked, but not before I caught it. "I see," she said carefully. "And where are you keeping your things, Samantha?" "Wherever they fit," I replied with a forced smile. Throughout dinner, I felt my aunt's concerned glances. When the meal ended, she found me alone in the kitchen loading the dishwasher. "This isn't right," she said quietly. "Diana and Frank shouldn't be treating you this way." I shrugged, maintaining my facade of acceptance. "It's temporary. Still, you're their daughter, not some house guest they can stick on the floor. Do you need money for an apartment? I could help." Her kindness nearly broke my composure, but I managed to shake my head. "I'm figuring things out my own way, but thank you." Later that evening, passing the partially open door of my parents' bedroom, I overheard a conversation that crystallized everything. "I worry about Samantha," Dad was saying. "She seems stuck." "She needs to try harder," Mom replied. "When we were her age, we already had a house and were starting a family." "Different economy back then," Dad admitted. "Still, she's not exactly hustling." Architecture was always a risky choice. Remember how we tried to talk her into accounting like Gregory? "She seems to be failing at life right now," Dad sighed. "I thought she'd have moved out by now." "Well, she can't stay on our living room floor forever. Maybe this will motivate her to figure things out." I stepped silently away from the door, their words echoing in my mind. Failing at life. As if my worth as a person was measured solely by my employment status during a global economic crisis. As if my academic achievements, my volunteer work, my personal character counted for nothing. That night, as I lay on the hard floor staring at the ceiling, something shifted within me. The hurt calcified into resolve. I would not continue to subject myself to this treatment, but neither would I give them the satisfaction of a dramatic exit or confrontation. Instead, I would execute a plan so perfect, so quietly devastating that they would never forget the daughter they had so carelessly discarded. The next morning, I contacted a realtor. "I need to see properties in this neighborhood," I told her. "Specifically, anything available on this street." Luck, or perhaps fate, was on my side. The house directly next door to my parents', a modest 3-bedroom that had stood empty for months following the owner's relocation, was still on the market. Its price had been reduced twice due to needed repairs and updating. "It's a fixer-upper," the realtor, Melanie, warned as we toured the dusty rooms. "The kitchen is original from the 80s, and the bathrooms need complete overhauls." I ran my hand along a wall, seeing not what was there but what could be. "The bones are good," I observed. "And the backyard is large." "Over a quarter acre," Melanie confirmed. "More than most in this neighborhood." I stopped at the back windows, looking out at the expansive yard that directly adjoined my parents' property. A slow smile spread across my face as I envisioned what I could create in that space. "I'm interested," I told her. "Very interested." The day after accepting Hartman's job offer, I met with a loan officer at First National Bank. With my new employment contract, excellent credit score from years of careful financial management, and the modest inheritance my grandmother had left me, which my parents didn't know about, I qualified for a mortgage on the neighboring property. The house was undervalued due to its dated condition, making it an even more attractive investment. "You're making a smart decision," Bernard, the loan officer, told me as we reviewed the paperwork. "Property in this neighborhood has appreciated consistently over the past decade, even through the recession." "In thinking long-term," I replied, signing the documents with steady hands. While waiting for the closing process, I began working at Hartman Design. Each morning, I would leave the house before my family woke, spending extra hours at the office to avoid returning to my floor space. My colleagues welcomed me warmly, impressed by my portfolio and work ethic. Marissa assigned me to a sustainable office complex project, allowing me to immediately apply my expertise in green building materials. "Your attention to detail is exceptional," she commented after reviewing my first draft modifications. "This is exactly why we hired you." For the first time in months, I felt valued and respected. The contrast between my professional treatment and my family situation could not have been starker. At work, my opinions mattered. At home, I was literally beneath notice, a body on the floor to be stepped around. I opened a separate bank account for my new salary, ensuring my parents had no knowledge of my improved financial situation. When Dad asked about my days, I would vaguely mention following some leads or networking, never revealing that I had secured not just employment, but a position at one of the most respected firms in the region. Meanwhile, I conducted my real estate transaction with utmost secrecy. I used my lunch breaks for meetings with the realtor and contractor, my early mornings for property inspections. The closing happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I signed the final documents, accepted the keys, and officially became a homeowner, all while my family remained completely unaware. The house required significant work, but that played to my advantage. The necessary renovations would take time, allowing me to prepare everything perfectly before making my move. I hired Raphael, a contractor recommended by Melanie, to begin work immediately. "I need to prioritize the bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen," I explained during our initial walkthrough. "The cosmetic updates can wait, but I need the essentials functional within 6 weeks." Raphael nodded, making notes. "We can make that happen. What about the backyard? Any plans there?" I smiled. "Very specific ones. But let's focus on the interior first." Each evening after work, I'd slip next door to check progress and make decisions on fixtures, flooring, and paint colors. The transformation was remarkable even in the early stages. Raphael and his team removed dated wallpaper, replaced worn carpeting with hardwood floors, and modernized the electrical system. The kitchen took shape with sleek quartz countertops and energy-efficient appliances. The main bathroom received a complete overhaul with a rainfall shower and heated tile floors, a small luxury I had always dreamed of. Throughout this process, I maintained my quiet routine at my parents' house. I continued sleeping on the floor, cooking meals, and cleaning as expected. If my parents noticed my extended absences or occasional paint smudges on my clothes, they never mentioned it. Their focus remained firmly on Brooke, whose room makeover had been completed with lavender walls and new furniture. "Doesn't Brooke's room look amazing?" Mom asked one evening as we cleared the dinner table. "The color is so soothing, perfect for studying." "It looks great," I agreed neutrally, remembering how Shed refused my request to paint the same room years earlier. By the 5th week of renovations, my new home was taking shape. The interior was nearly complete, with just finishing touches remaining. It was time to implement the final part of my plan, the statement piece that would make my point impossible to ignore. I met with 3 different pool contractors before selecting Coastal Designs, a company known for their innovative approaches and quality work. I want something distinctive, I told Heather, their lead designer. Modern, clean lines, with a small waterfall feature on the far end. What dimensions were you thinking? She asked, sketching preliminary ideas. 16 by 32 feet, I replied. Positioned here. I indicated the section of yard directly visible from my parents' kitchen and living room windows. Heather raised an eyebrow but made no comment about the specific placement. We'll need permits, and the excavation will be noisy. That's not a concern, I assured her, signing the contract for work to begin immediately. The timing aligned perfectly. The pool excavation would start the same week I planned to make my exit from my parents' house. For 6 weeks, I had maintained the pretense of acceptance while systematically preparing my escape and revenge. My new furniture had been delivered and arranged. My kitchen was stocked. My clothes hung neatly in spacious closets rather than crumpled in hallway boxes. On my final night sleeping on my parents' floor, I lay awake longer than usual, absorbing the discomfort one last time to ensure I would never forget how it felt to be deemed unworthy of basic dignity. In the morning, I would execute the plan I'd been crafting since that first night of displacement. The thought brought not anger, but a strange sense of peace. This wasn't about hurting my family as they had hurt me. It was about reclaiming my worth in the most undeniable way possible. Before dawn, I carefully rolled up the sleeping bag for the final time. At 5:30 in the morning, I silently packed my remaining belongings into 2 suitcases and a backpack. The house was still dark, my family asleep upstairs in their comfortable beds. I moved with practiced efficiency, gathering my toiletries from the bathroom caddy and the few personal items I'd kept in the living room. The sleeping bag I left neatly rolled in the closet, a parting gift they hadn't earned. I wrote a simple note and left it on the kitchen counter. Found my own place. Won't be needing the floor anymore. No explanation. No forwarding address, no emotional appeals. Just a statement of fact that mirrored the casual cruelty with which they had treated me. As I loaded my car in the pre-dawn light, I glanced at the house next door my house. From the outside, it still looked largely the same, giving no hint of the transformation within. That reveal would come later, carefully orchestrated for maximum impact. I drove to work earlier than usual, using the office shower to prepare for the day and storing my suitcases in my car until evening. Throughout my workday, my phone buzzed with notifications I deliberately ignored. By lunch, I'd received 3 texts from Mom, 2 from Dad, and surprisingly 1 from Brooke. Where are your things?
Mom, 7:42 Uhr morgens.
Call us when you get this.
Dad, 8:15 Uhr morgens.
What do you mean you found a place? Where?
Mom, 9:30 Uhr morgens. We need to talk about this.
Call home.
Dad, 11:20 Uhr morgens.
Did you really move out? Where did you go? Brooke, 12:05 p.m. I silenced my phone and focused on finalizing designs for the office complex project. My colleagues noticed my unusual intensity, but attributed it to professional dedication rather than personal circumstances. By 5 o'clock, I had completed a week's worth of work and felt a sense of accomplishment that strengthened my resolve for the evening ahead. As I drove home my new home, I noticed my parents' cars in their driveway. Perfect timing. I pulled into my own driveway next door, gathering my belongings from the trunk with unhurried movements. I could feel eyes on me through the kitchen window of my parents' house, but didn't acknowledge the observation. The front door of my new home opened with a satisfying click of the key. Inside, the transformation was complete. Modern furnishings arranged exactly to my specifications. Soft lighting illuminating spaces designed for comfort and functionality. The scent of fresh paint and new beginnings. I set down my bags and took a moment to absorb the reality I had created through determination and secret planning. I had just begun unpacking when the expected knock came at my door. Through the peephole, I could see both my parents standing on the porch, confusion evident in their postures. I opened the door but remained in the threshold, not inviting them in. Samantha? Mom looked past me into the house, her eyes widening at the glimpse of my furnished living room. What is this? You bought a house. Yes, I replied simply. Next door to us? Dad asked incredulously. When did this happen? How did this happen? I've been working at Hartman Design for 6 weeks. I explained, my voice calm and matter-of-fact. The job you never asked about. The career advancement you were too busy to notice while focusing on Brooke's room color. Their expressions shifted from confusion to defensive indignation. You never told us you got a job, Mom protested. You never asked, I countered. Not once in 6 weeks did either of you express genuine interest in my professional progress. You were too busy stepping over me on your living room floor. Dad ran a hand through his thinning hair, visibly flustered. You could have said something instead of just disappearing. Like you said something before moving my belongings into the hallway? The question hung between us, unanswered and unanswerable. Behind them, I spotted Brooke approaching hesitantly from their house. She stopped at the bottom of my porch steps, taking in the scene. Can we come in? Mom asked, already moving forward as if my consent were a given. I remained firmly in the doorway.
No.
This is my home, and I decide who enters it. That privilege needs to be earned. The shock on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances. They had never imagined I would deny them anything, much less access to a space. Their assumption of entitlement to my life extended even to this moment of separation. Samantha, we're family, Dad said, as if invoking the word negated all previous mistreatment. Family doesn't make someone sleep on the floor when alternatives exist, I replied. Family doesn't dismiss someone's struggles or contributions. Family doesn't measure worth by employment status during a global recession. A rumbling sound from the backyard interrupted our confrontation. The pool excavation had begun right on schedule, the heavy machinery visible from the side of the house. Mom turned toward the noise. What's happening back there? Renovations, I replied with deliberate vagueness. Already?
You just moved in, Dad said.
I've owned this house for 6 weeks. I corrected him. Today is just the first day you've noticed. The revelation silenced them momentarily. 6 weeks of planning and preparation had happened literally next door, and they had been too self-absorbed to notice. The metaphor was almost too perfect. We're having a family dinner tonight, Mom finally said, regrouping. You should come over and we can discuss this situation properly. Thank you for the invitation, but I have unpacking to do. I declined politely but firmly. And contractors to supervise. What exactly are you having done back there? Dad asked, craning his neck to see past the house to where the excavation sounds continued. You'll see soon enough, I replied. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a lot to do. I closed the door gently but decisively, leaving them standing on the porch. Through the front window, I watched them confer among themselves, gesturing animatedly before reluctantly returning to their house. Only Brooke glanced back, her expression unreadable from a distance. Over the next 2 weeks, the pool installation progressed rapidly. The excavation gave way to framing, then plumbing, then the gunite application that formed the pool's shell. From my parents' kitchen and living room windows, the construction was impossible to ignore, a daily reminder of my presence and prosperity. My parents made several attempts to reconnect, each one revealing their failure to understand the fundamental issue. Mom appeared at my door with homemade cookies to welcome you to the neighborhood, as if I were a stranger rather than her daughter. Dad offered to help with renovation decisions, suggesting paint colors and fixtures, as if my architectural training were meaningless. Each overture carefully avoided acknowledging their treatment of me or offering genuine apology. I remained cordial but distant, accepting the cookies with thanks, but not inviting further conversation. I declined Dad's offers of help with a simple, I have professionals handling everything, but thank you. The confrontation I had anticipated came when the waterfall feature was installed, its elegant stone facade rising prominently in the direct sight line from my parents' kitchen window. Mom appeared at my back door, which opened toward the pool construction. This seems excessive, she said without preamble, gesturing toward the half-finished pool. Are you trying to make some kind of statement? I looked at her steadily. In creating a home that reflects my values and priorities. Just as you did when you decided the floor was adequate accommodations for your daughter. You're being dramatic about that, she dismissed. It was temporary. So is everything, I replied. Including relationships. She flinched at the implication. What does that mean? It means I'm establishing boundaries. This pool, this house, they represent my independence and the respect I require moving forward. You and Dad taught me a valuable lesson about where I stand in the family hierarchy. I'm simply responding accordingly. By buying the house next door and building a pool we can see from our kitchen? This feels spiteful, Samantha. I prefer to think of it as instructive, I corrected. Every time you look out your window, you'll remember the daughter who slept on your floor while having the capability to create all this. The daughter whose career achievements you dismissed. The daughter who will never again accept being treated as less than she deserves. For the first time, I saw something like understanding dawn in my mother's eyes, quickly followed by dismay. The narrative she had constructed about her struggling, directionless eldest daughter crumbled in the face of my evident success and determination. We didn't know you were suffering, she said quietly. You didn't want to know, I corrected her. And that makes all the difference. As spring turned to summer, my new life took shape with a clarity and purpose that surprised even me. My career at Hartman Design flourished as Marissa assigned me increasingly significant responsibilities on major projects. My home transformation continued, each improvement reflecting my personal taste and professional expertise. The pool neared completion, its azure waters visible from both my bedroom window and, pointedly, my parents' kitchen. The neighbors, many of whom had known me since childhood, reacted to my sudden homeownership with varying degrees of curiosity and support. Caroline Burton from across the street brought a housewarming plant with a card reading, "Congrats on your independence." Lawrence Mitchell, whose son I'd tutored in math years earlier, offered recommendations for local handymen and lawn services. Bold move, buying next to your parents, he commented while helping me set up my mailbox. Most kids your age are trying to get away from family, not move closer. I smiled. Sometimes the closest distance creates the strongest boundaries. He laughed, not fully understanding the layers of my statement. Well, it's good to have a young homeowner on the street. Brings up property values. My relationship with my family evolved in unexpected ways following my dramatic exit. My parents cycled through stages of reaction, initial shock and disbelief, followed by indignation, then awkward attempts at reconciliation, and finally, a grudging respect tinged with embarrassment. Dad was the first to approach with something resembling genuine remorse. He appeared at my door one evening as I was planting flower beds along my front walkway. "Need an extra pair of hands?" he offered, gesturing to the remaining plants. I hesitated, then nodded. "You can start with the hostas along the side." We worked in silence for several minutes before he spoke again. "The house looks good. You've done amazing things with it already." "Thank you." Another long pause. "I was wrong, Samantha, about a lot of things." I continued planting, neither accepting nor rejecting his implicit apology. "I never should have let your mother give away your room," he continued. "And I certainly shouldn't have suggested you sleep on the floor. It was disrespectful and hurtful." I sat back on my heels, meeting his eyes directly. "Yes, it was. I got caught up in Brooke's needs and forgot that you had needs too. That was unfair." "It wasn't just unfair," I corrected him. "It was dehumanizing. You treated me like my worth was tied to my employment status, like I was failing at life because of circumstances beyond my control." He winced at hearing his own words reflected back. "I was wrong," he repeated. "And I'm sorry." His apology was genuine but incomplete. He understood that his actions had hurt me, but not how deeply they had altered our relationship. Still, it was a beginning. Mom proved less capable of genuine introspection. Her attempts at reconciliation focused on minimizing what had happened rather than acknowledging its impact. "You're making too much of this, Samantha," she said during an uncomfortable encounter at the local grocery store. "Families make sacrifices for each other all the time." The problem wasn't the sacrifice, I explained, selecting apples with deliberate care. It was the assumption that I deserved less dignity than Brooke. It was the message that my worth was conditional. She sighed impatiently. Well, you've certainly made your point with that pool. The neighbors are all talking about it. I didn't build it for the neighbors, I replied, leaving her to draw her own conclusions. My success became increasingly difficult for my parents to ignore or dismiss. The local business journal featured Hartman Design's sustainable office complex, specifically highlighting my contributions to the project. My renovation choices attracted attention from neighbors and eventually a local home tour charity event. The swimming pool, completed in early June, became the envy of the neighborhood with its sleek design and energy-efficient heating system. I hosted my first pool party on the summer solstice, inviting colleagues from work, new friends, and neighbors, but not my family. From their kitchen window, my parents could see the gathering. Professional adults enjoying cocktails and conversation around the water feature I designed myself. The message was clear. I had created a joyful, successful life literally within view of those who had dismissed my potential. The most surprising development came from Brooke. Unlike our parents, she approached me with straightforward remorse that suggested genuine growth. I was awful to you, she said bluntly, having appeared at my door one afternoon. I let Mom and Dad treat you badly, and then I piled on with my friends. I'm really sorry, Sam. Her directness caught me off guard. Why are you apologizing now? She shrugged, looking younger than her 18 years. I've been thinking about college, about being on my own soon. And I realized I might end up in your situation someday, struggling not because I failed, but because life is hard sometimes. And I'd hope someone would show me more kindness than we showed you. Her insight impressed me. That's perceptive. I miss you, she admitted. And I feel terrible about taking your room. I should have refused. You were 17. The adults should have known better. Still, I'm sorry. She hesitated. Do you think we could try to be sisters again? Real ones, not the version where I was a spoiled brat and you were treated like furniture. Her candor surprised a laugh from me. That's a pretty accurate summary. So, can we start over? I considered her request. Unlike our parents, Brooke showed genuine understanding of the hurt caused and sincere desire to repair the relationship. She was young, still forming her adult identity and values. We can try, I agreed cautiously. But I need you to understand something. I'm not the same person who left your house that morning. I've changed in fundamental ways. I can see that. She gestured toward my home, the evidence of my transformation. You're kind of badass now. This time my laugh was genuine. Let's start with coffee next week. Small steps. Our parents continued their attempts at justification, even as evidence of their misjudgment surrounded them. Dad would casually mention my lucky break at Hartman, as if my success were a matter of chance rather than education and persistence. Mom occasionally referred to my extreme reaction in purchasing the neighboring house, refusing to acknowledge the symbolic power of my choice. Your sister thinks we should all have dinner together soon, Mom mentioned during a chance encounter as we both collected our mail. A family reunion of sorts. I'm not ready for that, I replied honestly. My boundaries aren't negotiable right now. Boundaries, she repeated with a sigh. You never needed boundaries before. I always needed them, I corrected her. I just didn't know how to establish them until you and Dad taught me the consequences of not having them. As summer progressed, I found myself growing increasingly comfortable with my new reality. The anger that had initially fueled my actions gradually transformed into something more sustainable, a quiet confidence in my own worth and capabilities. I no longer needed my parents' validation or approval. The realization was simultaneously liberating and somewhat sad, a necessary growing up that came later than it should have. My home became my sanctuary, not just from my family's treatment, but from the lingering self-doubt their actions had instilled. Each room reflected choices made with intention and care. My career provided not just financial security, but creative fulfillment and professional respect. Even my carefully cultivated garden beds represented growth that I controlled and nurtured. The pool, my most visible statement of independence, became less about sending a message to my parents and more about creating joy for myself. On warm evenings after work, I would float on my back, watching the sky change colors above me, feeling gratitude for my own resilience. These quiet moments of peace were the true victory, far more meaningful than any reaction I'd provoked from my family. One Sunday afternoon, as I worked in my front garden, I noticed Brooke walking hesitantly up my driveway. Our coffee meetings had become a regular occurrence, gradually rebuilding a relationship based on mutual respect rather than family obligation. "Mom and Dad are fighting again," she said without preamble. "About you, about how they treated you. Dad says they were wrong. Mom says you're overreacting. It's getting worse." I continued pruning my rose bushes. "That's not your problem to fix, Brooke. Or mine. I know. But I hate seeing what's happening to our family." I straightened, meeting her troubled gaze. "The family was already broken when they decided I deserved less dignity than you. What you're seeing now is just the visible manifestation of problems that were already there." She nodded slowly. "I get that now. I just wish they did too." "They might eventually," I said, surprising myself with the optimism. "Growth isn't linear, and some people take longer than others." "When did you get so wise?" she asked with a small smile. "Somewhere between the floor and the pool," I replied. One year after purchasing my house, I hosted a housewarming party. The timing was deliberate, a celebration not just of the property, but of my journey from that first night on the hard floor to complete transformation. My home was now fully renovated, each room a testament to my vision and persistence. The garden beds burst with color, the kitchen gleamed with high-end appliances, and the pool sparkled in the June sunshine. My guest list was carefully curated, colleagues from Hartman Design, including Marissa herself, neighbors who had supported my transition to homeownership, new friends made through professional networking, Aunt Patricia and Uncle Gregory, and, after much consideration, Brooke. My parents received no invitation, a boundary that remained necessary for my peace of mind. As I arranged flowers in the kitchen, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. The woman looking back bore little resemblance to the one who had once silently rolled up a sleeping bag each morning to hide evidence of her existence. My posture was straighter, my expression more confident. The past year had reshaped me as thoroughly as I had reshaped this house. "This place is amazing, Sam," Brooke said, arriving early to help with preparations. At 18, she had matured considerably. Her formerly self-centered perspective broadened by our conversations and her own experiences applying to colleges. "Thanks. It feels like home now." She glanced toward our parents' house, visible through the kitchen window. "They know you're having a party. I expected they would notice. Mom wanted me to ask if they could come. I told her I wouldn't bring it up." I smiled appreciatively. "Thanks for respecting that boundary." "I've learned a lot from you this year," she admitted. "About standing up for yourself. About not accepting less than you deserve." "Those were expensive lessons for me to learn," I said, thinking of the emotional cost rather than the financial investment in the house. "I'm glad they came easier to you." The party unfolded beautifully throughout the afternoon and into evening. Guests mingled on the patio, swam in the pool, and admired the thoughtful design choices throughout the house. Marissa raised a toast to my professional accomplishments, announcing my promotion to project lead on the firm's newest sustainable housing development. Aunt Patricia embraced me with tears in her eyes, whispering how proud she was of my resilience. As twilight descended, I found myself alone for a moment by the pool, watching the lights illuminate the water in shifting patterns of blue and teal. The waterfall feature created a soothing background soundtrack, its gentle splash embodying the tranquility I had fought so hard to achieve. Movement at the fence line caught my attention. My father stood in their backyard, watching the party from a distance. Our eyes met briefly before he raised a hand in a tentative wave. I returned the gesture with a small nod, neither inviting nor dismissing the connection. He lingered a moment longer before turning back toward their house, shoulders slightly slumped. The interaction, brief as it was, crystallized the year's most important lesson. True reconciliation could only happen when all parties acknowledged the reality of what had occurred. My parents remained caught in their own narrative, unable or unwilling to fully recognize the impact of their actions. Until that changed, our relationship would remain cordial but distant, like neighboring homeowners who exchange pleasantries but never invite each other inside. Later that evening, as the last guests departed, Brooke helped me gather empty glasses from around the pool. "I got accepted to State University," she announced casually. "Full scholarship." "Brooke, that's fantastic." I gave her a genuine hug. "I'm so proud of you." "I was thinking," she continued hesitantly, "that I might study architecture. If that's not weird, since it's your thing." I smiled. "It's not weird. You'd be great at it." "Really? Mom says it's too competitive, that I should do business instead." The echo of familiar discouragement made me set down the glasses I was holding and face her directly. "Listen to me, Brooke. The only person who gets to decide what you're capable of is you. Not Mom, not Dad, not me. You." She nodded slowly, like you decided you were capable of all this. She gestured to encompass the house, the pool, my successful career. Exactly. The floor was never the end of my story. It's not even the most interesting part anymore. After Brooke left, I walked through my quiet house, turning off lights and reflecting on the journey of the past year. The pain had been real and deep, but it had also been transformative. From the humiliation of sleeping on a hard floor, I had built not just a home, but a life defined by my own terms. The lessons had come at a high cost, but their value was undeniable. True worth comes from within, not from others' validation. My parents' dismissal had felt like a definitive judgment on my value, but their assessment had been profoundly wrong. My worth existed independently of their recognition. Dignity is not negotiable. By treating the floor as adequate accommodation, my family had attempted to normalize disrespect. My departure and subsequent success represented a reclamation of basic human dignity. Actions speak louder than apologies. My parents' continued attempts at reconciliation without full acknowledgement revealed the limits of verbal remorse without behavioral change. Creating boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary. The physical boundary of separate houses represented the emotional boundaries needed for healthy relationships. Most importantly, I learned that pain could be channeled into productive action rather than bitter resentment. The house, the pool, my career advancement, none of these were acts of revenge, but rather affirmations of self-worth. I hadn't built this life to hurt my parents, but to heal myself. As I prepared for bed in my beautifully designed master bedroom, I thought about the sleeping bag still rolled in my parents' closet. That part of my life was over, but the lessons remained an integral part of who I had become. I no longer harbored anger toward my family, just a clear-eyed understanding of our new reality and the boundaries necessary to maintain my peace. The transformation of the past year extended far beyond the physical spaces I had renovated. The most significant renovation had been internal, reshaping my understanding of family, respect, and self-worth. From the humiliation of the floor had come the foundation of a life built on my own terms, with no apologies and no compromises on essential dignity. The pool lights cast gentle blue reflections on my ceiling as I drifted toward sleep, content in the knowledge that I had created this sanctuary through my own determination. Whatever relationship evolved with my parents in the future would be one of equals meeting across a fence, not a daughter desperately seeking approval from a floor. Have you ever had to create a boundary with family that seemed drastic but was necessary for your well-being? Comment below with your experiences. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of personal growth and transformation. And share this with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for their worth. Remember, sometimes the most painful experiences can lead to the most beautiful transformations if we have the courage to take that first step. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you deserve dignity and respect in every relationship in your life.